Let me just confirm. Hold on. Is staff ready? Judge, you're ready? Or sorry, Mr. Attorney Drake, you're ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'd already hit the live stream button, so you guys are live.
Okay, thank you. So here, let me start the video. Welcome everybody to an special call meeting for the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections voter registration. It is December 21st, 2020. And the first item on the agenda is a reading of the oath of office, the board member oath of office. So I'll go ahead and do that. Because I do swear or affirm that I will, as a member of the Board of Elections, duly attend all ensuing primaries and elections during the continuance thereof, that I will, to the best of my ability, prevent any fraud, deceit, or abuse in carrying on the same, that I will make a true and perfect return of such primaries and elections, and that I will at all times truly, impartially, and faithfully perform my duties in accordance with Georgia laws to the best of my judgment and ability. The next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. So if the members would review the agenda.
The agenda.
Mr. Raffo, I believe I heard you make the motion.
Yeah, I was just moving to adopt the agenda.
Okay, so there's a motion to adopt the agenda. And all in favor, excuse me, is there a second to?
A second.
Second made by Ms. Fambro. Is there any discussion? So the one thing that I'm wondering, and we can ask our attorney here, is should we amend the agenda to include the additional challenge that you sent to us? You're muted, Mr. Drake.
Mr. Chairman, we do need to amend the agenda. We have one challenge. We have one challenge that was filed by Mr. Gordon Roden on December 16th. I think that one is on the agenda. And then we subsequently received another challenge also filed by Mr. Roden dated December 18th, which needs to be added to the agenda.
And I believe we've also had the an editing to the first challenge for correcting things that were in the letter in the first challenge that were inaccurate.
That is correct. I sent that out to the board, and we would include that as what we're actually reviewing today, the amended revised December 16th challenge that had the correct numbers and did not refer to Cobb County, but instead refers to Athens-Clarke.
And that was also for this. So this, and the second one you mentioned is also for 2,948 voters.
Per my counting, I noted it to be for the second one to be for 4,943 voters.
Okay, 4,943.
I mean, I could approximately, but it's for more in it because I was just looking at the spreadsheet to come up with that number.
Sure. I'm just trying to make sure we get the language right on the agenda.
Well, so we have a December 16th challenge from Gordon Roden, challenging the qualifications of approximately 2,000. Someone else needs to mute because I'm getting some echo, if they don't mind. So we have a December 16th challenge from Gordon Roden, challenging the qualifications of approximately 2,948 voters and their eligibility to vote in the January 5th, 2021 general election runoff pursuant to OCGA 21-2-230A. And then we subsequently received a second December 18th challenge from Gordon Roden, challenging the qualifications of approximately 4,943 voters and their eligibility to vote in the January 5th, 2021 general election runoff pursuant to OCGA 21-2-230A as well. So we would need a motion to add that second challenge to be considered along with the December 16th challenge.
Yes, sir. And also, it said that I like when I looked at the email actually that was sent about regarding the second challenge. It came from GA Elector Challenge at truththevote.org. But it was signed. There's the name Gordon Roden signed on the bottom of it. But the email address that sent it was gaelectorchallenge@truththevote.org. So I'm wondering if that has any influence over who's actually filing.
I do not believe so, Mr. Chairman, but I think you are correct. You note correctly that it did come from GA Elector Challenge.
Okay, so could we? I'm suggesting that we amend the agenda and so there would be an item D. Would we have to have two separate votes, Mr. Drake, on this?
I think it would be appropriate, as I'll explain in a minute, that the board consider these two challenges together because they concern the same issue, but nonetheless, we still need to amend the agenda, add the December 18th challenge.
Yes, sir. So is it okay if I could include them in one item?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the agenda would read item D, Gordon Roden challenging the eligibility of 2,948 Clarke County voters. And then in paren, it'd be 12/16/2020, December 16, 2020, close paren, and 4,943 Clarke County voters, paren, December 18th, 2020, close paren. Would that be acceptable?
I think so. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So do we have that motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Already
Go
here.
You're
Mr.
right.
Chairman,
Mr. Raffle, would you like to amend your motion?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to see that motion.
first of all, please microphones. I don't think the stream is showing on YouTube also. Can we confirm that before we take any votes?
Rocky, I just checked it and it's going.
Oh, I must be looking at the wrong link then. I apologize.
And Josh Edwards, assistant manager, I did check with PIO, and they said they can see it as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion. But I'm happy to amend my original motion regarding the agenda with the addition of those two items that were discussed.
Thank you. Ms. Fambro, does your second still stand? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Raffle and a second by Ms. Fambro. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I saw a hand from Mr. Raffle. I saw a hand from Ms. Fambro. Heard an aye from Ms. Till. I haven't heard from Mr. Napper. Any opposed to this? Mr. Napper, your mic is muted if you're speaking. Okay. So I guess I'm voting in favor of amending the agenda as well, adopting the agenda with the amendments, and we'll just consider that an abstention and move forward. So we have 4 voting in favor of adopting the agenda with the amendments and 1 abstention on that item. So the next item on the agenda is public comment, and we have had people email me and the board in general about this, and what I've done is compiled these into a Google document, which I'll convert to PDF and send to staff and everybody. We have just one person do it right before the meeting started, which is why I hadn't converted it to a PDF yet. But I will go ahead and read these out for the community, for the public, and for the board, and for staff. So first one, is from Joshua Barkin. It says, to the Board of Electors, I was disappointed and frustrated to read a recent article in the Flagpole reporting on Gordon Roden's challenge to thousands of Athenians' participation in the democratic process. I was also angered to see the names of myself and my spouse on the list. I presume that this is because we filed a change of address form in September, although any actual investigation could easily have ascertained that we both continue to maintain our residency in Athens. I am an associate professor of geography at the University of Georgia and received a temporary research fellowship for this academic year at the Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. We forward our email to Princeton, although we continue to own our home and pay taxes and utilities in Athens. I continue to be employed at UGA and to work with and advise students here. More galling, however, is that my wife, Susan Podolsky, continues to conduct her normal shifts, treating patients as an ER physician at St. Mary's Hospital. In the midst of a pandemic, it's no euphemism to say that she continues to put her life at risk for the people of Athens, whether they are Democrats or Republicans, mask wearers and social distancers or not. Of course, in a democratic society, she should receive no less or more than any other citizen in our community. But the notion that someone in our community should try to deprive us of our right to vote really enrages me. It suggests a level of casual arrogance and disregard for others that I'm sure would shock, anger, and frustrate Mr. Roden were he on the receiving end. I would ask that you throw out the challenge. Sincerely, Josh Barkin. The next piece of public comment is from William Peterson. It says, hello. As a citizen of Georgia and an employee of our Athens-Clarke County Unified Government, I personally and humbly believe it's fair to let every side be heard to restore faith in our elections. The challenge by the GOP in the county over the allegation that voters that live out of state voted in our elections is the reason for the email. I just saw in the paper that the Athens GOP brought forward, and it is scheduled to be heard tomorrow. In regards to such, please let them be heard. Lately, I've heard so much hate towards government in general and those in power because of a lack of transparency. I think that the only way forward without a dark cloud hanging over us is to let all sides be heard and be as transparent as possible. I don't want the shadow of doubt hanging over us as well. So please let it be heard, and if need be, investigated. If the allegation is proven true, it needs to be remedied. If it's false and show facts, it's not. This has to be resolved either way. I hope you do the right thing for everyone in our county, state, and country. Thank you for your service to the community and to our state. Please understand, I mean no disrespect or bias by sending this email. Just concerned because of the large-scale doubt, especially in our state's election practices this particular election, and I want the best for all Georgians. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. And then when I asked him if this was meant for public comment, he said yes, that would be okay with me. Just please make sure to exclude or block out my email address if you don't mind. I'm not going to mention his email. I feel like everyone should be okay with what I was thinking. We all should want everyone to feel that like our county is transparent and hears all sides equally. Feel free to also share my other email saying that I think you've done a great job as well for all constituents, because I believe you have. Not a big fan of the commission at the moment, LOL. Thank you again for everything. Sincerely, Bill P. Again, it's William Peterson. The next public comment comes from Philip E. Hale. Members of the ACC Election Board, I demand that you properly discharge your duty and reject the baseless and illegal attempt at voter caging, which is currently taking place in Clarke County. This blatant 11th hour partisan effort to disenfranchise Georgia voters without probable cause must not be allowed. Thank you, Philip E. Hale, registered Athens-Clarke County voter since 1984. We have a microphone open that's interfering right now. Thank you. This next one is from Penny Oldfather. It says, Dear Mr. Evans, Mr. Napper, Ms. Till, Mr. Cook, and Mr. Raffle. And I believe that Mr. Cook is actually referring to Ms. Fambo. It was looking at the email address. I'm writing to urge you to reject the recent request challenging the eligibility of more than 16,000 voters in Clarke County. This is part of a voter caging scheme launched across the state of Georgia. The ACLU is prepared to fight it. As you surely know, it is against federal law for systematic removal. That microphone is open again. Thank you. As you surely know, it is against federal law for systematic removal of voter registration eligibility within 90 days of an election. This is a blatant effort by Republicans to suppress the vote for the Senate seat runoffs and must be rejected. Similar suits across the state are being rejected as the challenges have failed to establish probable cause, which must be individualized and particularized with respect to each person. Thank you, sincerely, Penny Oldfather. Next one is from Pat Peterson. Mr. Evans, as a resident of Athens-Clarke County, I urge you to reject the mass challenge to voter eligibility in our county. For the ACLU, the complainant's argument lacks probable cause. Thank you, Pat Peterson. The next public comment comes from Jacqueline Elsner. Dear members of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections, at today's special called meeting, you have before you a challenge brought by the Athens-Clarke County Republican Party, challenging thousands of voter registrations in our county. I refer you to a letter published on December 18, 2020 by the ACLU of Georgia. The legal director of the ACLU of Georgia cautions you as a board to reject this challenge due to lack of probable cause. Hopefully our Athens-Clarke County Attorney Judge Drake will advise you of the legal consequences should you force thousands of Athens-Clarke County voters to answer these baseless charges. Attorney Drake has steadily counseled the board to be cautious not to take action that will bring legal challenges resulting in attendant county expenses after judgments of certain legal defeat. Sincerely, Jacqueline Elsner. The next public comment comes from
Jesse,
Gail.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I need to interrupt for a second. Mr. Napper says he can't hear anything on the meeting. So he didn't even know we had started. So I'm suggesting that he go out and come back in. I don't know how you want to handle that.
He's welcome to do that, and we can just continue, go out, come back in. I'll continue because we're not going to vote anytime soon, and we'll wait for. Well, let me. Should I just pause and wait till he comes back in? That's what I'll do. I'll pause until Mr. Necker comes back in.
Okay, I'll tell him what you're going to do.
I am here now.
Oh, great! Thank you, Mr. Necker.
Just keep your mic.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Mr. Napper. This next one's from Gail, I believe it says Cowie, to the ACC Board of Elections members. I encourage you to reject this challenge due to its violation of state and federal law. For example, the challenge is egregiously lacking in specifics, and as such, it does not meet the state requirements that challenges be individual and particular, among other problems. The burden is on the challenger to meet legal requirements, and this challenge clearly fails to do so. You all have done so much during this remarkably challenging year to promote promote public faith in elections as a cornerstone of our republic. Please do not take an action that would counter all that work now. I strongly encourage you to find that the challenge does not have sufficient probable cause. Thank you for your public service and for your consideration on this matter. Regards, Gail Cowie. And then it says, P.S. It's great to be able to early vote at Miriam Moore Community Center. Thank you for that as well. This next public comment is from Lyndall Tunnel. Jesse, she's referring to me, or he or she referring to me, they're referring to me. Jesse, I'm advised that an organization based in Texas has filed baseless voter eligibility challenges to 364,541 Georgia voters, including numerous registered voters in Athens-Clarke County. I also understand from experts in the relevant law that participation in this effort to disrupt the current ongoing runoff election would constitute a violation of both state and federal law. This is obviously yet another partisan attempt to prevent registered voters in Georgia, including in Athens-Clarke County, from exercising their right to vote and to have their votes counted. I'm confident that the members of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections will recognize this attack on our election process for what it is: a transparent, partisan attempt to deprive nearly 500,000 Georgia registered voters of their right to have their legally cast votes counted. I would add that in the event that the authors of this conspiracy to deprive Athens-Clarke County voters of the right to vote may be subject to the imposition of either civil or criminal penalties, it is my hope that the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections will vigorously pursue the imposition of such penalties or sanctions as may apply to persons or groups engaging in efforts to legally disenfranchise registered voters in our county. Please share my concern with the other members of the Board of Elections and enter my concern on the record of the proceedings of the board. With repeated thanks to you and to the other members of the board for your dedication protecting the rights of the registered voters of this county, Lindell Tunnel. This next one is from Bruce Minky. Jesse, I'm advised that an organization based in Texas has filed baseless voter eligibility challenges to 364,541 Georgia voters, including numerous registered voters in Athens-Clarke County. I also understand from experts in the relevant law that participation's effort to disrupt the current ongoing runoff election would constitute a violation of both state and federal law. This is obviously yet another partisan attempt to prevent registered voters in Georgia, including in Athens-Clarke County, from exercising their right to vote and to have their votes counted. We are confident that the members of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections will recognize this attack on our election process for what it is, a transparent partisan attempt to deprive nearly 500,000 Georgia registered voters of their right to have their legally cast votes counted. We would add that in the event the authors of this conspiracy to deprive Athens-Clarke County voters of the right to vote may be subject to the imposition of either civil or criminal penalties, it is our hope that the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections will vigorously pursue the imposition of such penalties or sanctions as may apply to persons or groups engaging in efforts to illegally disenfranchise registered voters in our county. Please share our concern with the other members of the Board of Elections and enter our concern in the record of the proceedings of the board. With repeated thanks to you and to the other members of the board for your dedication to protecting the rights of the registered voters of this county, Bruce Minky. This next public comment is from Regina Smith. A special called meeting of the Clarke County Board of Elections is being brought today by the Athens-Clarke County Republican Party. They are challenging thousands of voter registrations in our county and in every county in Georgia in a bogus stratagem termed caging. Don't fall for it. The legal director of the ACLU of Georgia has cautioned the Clarke County Board of Elections and the boards of every county in Georgia to reject this challenge. Their scheme lacks probable cause. It is hopeful that Athens-Clarke County's attorney, Judge Drake, will advise you properly and fully of the legal consequences should thousands of Athens-Clarke County voters be forced to answer these spurious charges, which are clearly illegal. I understand from friends who religiously attend Board of Elections meetings that Attorney Drake has counseled the board to refrain from being duped into taking actions that will bring legal challenges. We've already spent enough money chasing down non-existent fraud at the behest of our outgoing President Donald Trump and other Republicans. We don't need added expense caused by being duped to respond to this hoax offered up by the Clarke County Republicans. Thank you, Dr. Regina Smith. Next public comment is from Richard and Paula Zimdars. It says, the challenge to attempt to disenfranchise 16,024 Athens-Clarke County A/C voters should have been brought in a timely fashion well before the November 2020 election. Submitting a challenge 18 days before an election during a pandemic at the height of the holiday season, such an action will not bear legal scrutiny. Unfortunately, the challenge emanates from a family that has already brought national disgrace to the Athens-Clarke County. The bigotry of Joan Roden is permanently on display at this link. Please post it to the Athens-Clarke Democratic and Republican Party websites, which clearly we don't do that. But there's a link to an article on projectq.us, and the title says Athens GOP leader goes on anti-gay rant on Pulse anniversary. It continues, please reject this challenge now. If it can be followed up with legal action against Mr. Roden, do so. The Athens-Clarke Republican Party should consider asking Mr. and Mrs. Roden to step down. Insulting every Board of Election member and volunteer poll worker and intentionally contributing to the myth of election fraud in Georgia. Is that the Rodens' idea of a Christmas gift to their fellow Athenians? This is the last public comment coming up. This is from Sharon. Well, actually, it's from on Susan E. Scott, and it was sent on, from Sharon Blackwood. It's from both of these two people. It says, good morning, Mr. Evans. Below is a comment about mass voter challenges from the president of our state's League of Women Voters, Georgia. Please include it in your comment section of today's agenda. Board members, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Susanna Scott, and I am president of the League of Women Voters of Georgia. League of Women Voters of Georgia has hundreds of members who are actively involved with voter registration, education, and protection. The League is committed to ensuring that citizens have the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate in our democracy. To that end, I strongly encourage this board to dismiss the current challenges to the Athens-Clarke County voters' registrations. This challenge to Athens-Clarke County voters is an obvious and unwarranted attempt to depress voter turnout in the critical January 5th runoff election and serves no real benefit to the citizens of Clarke County or Georgia. Pursuant to OCGA Statute 21-2-230, Section B, there is no probable cause for challenging these voters' registration, and this mass challenge does not meet Georgia's requirement that challenges be individualized. Again, I urge you to dismiss these claims and to confirm that Clarke County has continued to maintain its voter rolls pursuant to Georgia law, and that Clarke County voters will not be intimidated in their exercise of their fundamental right to vote. Thank you. Susan E. Scott, President, she, her, League of Women's Voters of Georgia. And then it's signed also, thank you for volunteering your time for the voters of Athens and Clarke County, Sharon Blackwood, League of Women Voters of Georgia. And that concludes the public comment that I have. Are there any other pieces of public comment that other board members or staff have received?
Jesse, there's one more email that I believe Charlotte forwarded to you.
You're talking about the one that was from the ACLU, like that letter?
No, hold on, I'll forward it to you.
I'm seeing one from the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund letter.
I sent it to the wrong email address. Hold on.
Oh, okay. I think I got it now. It came through at 4:19 p.m. Yeah, and now I've got it. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and just put it in this other document, and then I'll read it. Takes 2 seconds. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Okay. This is from Adam Shirley. It says, members of the board and Director Sosby, good afternoon. Given that this is likely the final meeting of this board in 2020, which it's not, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Board of Elections for such a spectacularly productive year. I first want to thank Chairman Roden for making possible this opportunity for public comment. In May, our Board of Elections was beset on many fronts. Our board was short-staffed due to pandemic concerns. You were inundated by a record-shattering number of absentee ballots. You endured a baptism by fire as you organized, staffed, deployed, and oversaw a brand new voting system in its first large-scale election. Despite much confusion and frustration, this board of directors wisely guided Director Sosby as she bravely led a beleaguered staff. Responding directly to that confusion and frustration, our Board of Elections worked together to pull off a general election that, to all outward appearances, was velvet smooth. This speaks volumes to the patience, and wisdom of the board, to the expertise and perseverance of Director Sosby, and to the unfailing professionalism and dedication of our elections staff. By my count, this year our Board of Elections has processed 5 elections and 3 recounts this year. The sheer number of votes cast and tallied in our county this year must have set a record that will stand for a long time. To those who complain about delays in processing absentee ballots in Athens-Clarke County, I continue to explain exactly how many hours have been worked and how many weekends have been skipped by dozens of permanent staff and part-time poll workers. I am hopeful the county government will grant our entire Board of Elections office 2 to 4 weeks paid leave after the January 5th results are certified. Thank you all. Chair Evans, thank you for your dedicated service to this board and to the people of Athens-Clarke County. There can be no denying that the board you are leaving is much improved over the board you joined. To Vice Chair Napper, thank you for your decades of tireless work as a board member. Your wise and steady hand has guided us through the first part of this century. This community owes you a debt we cannot hope to repay. Again, thank you all. Adam Shirley. And thank you, Mr. Shirley, for that. And thank you, Lisa, again, for making sure that I saw that public comment. I've put it in the document with all the rest of it.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that concludes public comment unless somebody else has public comment that they know of. Cool. Moving on to item D, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Attorney Drake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the benefit of Mr. Napper, who was unable to hear some of the early discussion, I'll just kind of review very quickly what the board is charged with doing today. We have 2 challenges filed by Gordon Roden of 340 Heather Cove related to the qualifications of voters in the January 15th election. We had one that was dated December 16th, and then we subsequently received another challenge dated December 18th, which the board has now added to the agenda as well. The December 16th challenge from Mr. Roden challenges the qualifications of 2,948 voters and their eligibility to vote in the January 15, 2021 general election runoff pursuant to OCGA section 21-2-230A. The second December 18th challenge from Mr. Roden challenges the qualifications of approximately 4,943 voters and their eligibility to vote in the January 5th, 2021 general election runoff, again pursuant to OCGA 21-2-230A. As these 2 challenges concern the same code section and the same matter, I have recommended to the board that they take these 2 challenges together. So pursuant to OCGA 21-2-230A, the board is required at today's meeting to basically hold a probable cause hearing. This statute says, upon the filing of such challenge, the Board of Registrars shall immediately consider such challenge and determine whether probable cause exists to sustain such challenge. Mr. Roden has filed these 2 challenges today, stating that the people who have registered to vote have filed a notice of address change through the United States Postal Service. Georgia law, as stated in Mr. Roden's letter, he says that OCGA 21-2-217A4 states that Georgia residency is lost if a person removes to another state with the intention to making it such person's residence. So Mr. Roden is basically arguing that these change of address, the filing of the change of address by these subject voters establishes probable cause that they intended to make the new address that person's residence, and thus they are unable to vote in this election because they're no longer residences. The December 16th challenge specifically has provided a list which shows the name and the new address where the individual has moved, and the date on which the change of address was completed. The December 18th challenge shows a list, provides a list as well, which shows the name of the person, the address that appears to be where they were living in Athens-Clarke County, along with the new address where the individual has moved. In order for these challenges to proceed, the board has determined whether the challenger has established probable cause. I will now explain to you what probable cause means from a legal perspective. Probable cause means the existence of such fact or circumstance which would create a reasonable belief that the accused person committed the act alleged. Probable cause requires a reasonable ground for belief, which is something more than a mere suspicion. Rumor, suspicion, speculation, or conjecture is not sufficient to show probable cause. And importantly, probable cause must be individualized and particularized with respect to that person. For the reasons I will discuss, I don't believe that there is probable cause to challenge these voters. First, the mere production of a voter registration database compared with the National Change of Address Registry is not sufficient to establish probable cause. The list that the board has been provided doesn't show that the voters in the registration database are the same person as in the National Registry. It could be an entirely different person. In addition, the December 16th list doesn't show the Athens-Clarke County address, the December 16th list also doesn't even give us the original Athens-Clarke County address. I would also point out that many people change their addresses for various reasons, especially in a community such as Athens-Clarke County, which has a large university. They may be an individual may be temporarily working somewhere else. They could also be out of the state or country due to having to take care of someone in their family who is sick. So the mere fact that an individual's name is on this list does not, I don't believe, from a legal perspective, establish probable cause in this matter. I would also point out that OCGA, the official code of Georgia, has a separate code section, OCGA 21-2-332, that has a procedure whereby the Secretary of State will clear the information supplied by the United States Postal Service. That procedure is that the voter will be sent a confirmation to their old address and the new address, and if they confirm they have moved out of state, their name is removed. If they have moved to a different county within the state of Georgia, their registration is transferred. If they fail to respond within 30 days, they go into an inactive list under OCGA 21-2-332. They stay on the inactive list, that is, they are not removed, through 2 election cycles, whereupon they are then removed. Furthermore, the National Voter Registration Act states that states shall complete not later than 90 days prior to the date of an election for federal office any program with the purpose which is to systematically remove the names of ineligible voters from the list of eligible voters. We're approximately 70 days before the election. This list, in my legal opinion, is certainly not a fact, nor does it provide sufficient circumstances that would create a reasonable belief, in my opinion, that the listed voters are ineligible voters. In summary, I will add that it's ultimately up to the board to decide whether probable cause exists to sustain the 2 challenges before the board today. I've advised you of my understanding of the statute and the protections that are in place under 21-2-230. And your choice today is either to find probable cause or you can deny it. And if you don't find probable cause, then the challenge is ultimately denied. I will say, just to give the board some idea of what would happen if the board was to determine that probable cause exists today. If you did find there was probable cause, these voters would still be able to vote. They would just be marked as challenged in the system. And then when they showed up to vote, they'd vote what is in essence a provisional ballot. Or if they send in an absentee ballot, it would be marked as provisional as well. The board would then have a hearing afterwards, and it would be up at that point, each challenged voter, their status of whether they were eligible, were residents and eligible to vote would then be determined. So, in conclusion, I would like to ask. In conclusion, I would say this. I want to say that if you move forward to a hearing with the evidence with the information that's been presented and the challenges so far, I do think that it will be difficult to find that any of these individuals are ineligible. But that's just my reading of the statute and of the protections under the National Voter Registration Act. And so, because I do believe this is very close, if not squarely, in conjunction with the type of thing the National Voter Registration Act prohibits, which is a massive list maintenance immediately prior to election. So I would tell the board that you would need as board members to exercise caution today before you find that there is, if you intend to make a determination that there is probable cause. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see if Mr. Michael Petty, my assistant counsel, has anything he'd like to add to this discussion as well.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Evans. The only thing I would just add that I certainly agree with Judd. I don't think that the document that's been provided meets the standards for probable cause. And I would, I guess one of my concerns about this spreadsheet, this document, is that we don't really know. It purports to be from this National Change of Address Registry, but there's really not any, we don't know anything else about it. We don't know when it was produced, how it was produced, who produced it, where it's been maintained. I mean, we don't know if it's a full or partial list or the dates or anything. We don't know if the moves documented in there are temporary or permanent. And in fact, Chairman Evans, you just read a public comment that indicated that at least some of the information in it is not reliable. So, sometimes in the legal field, we talk about something called indicia of reliability, which are just circumstances or evidence that a particular document or something is reliable and that's trustworthy. And I just don't think, based on just the spreadsheet and the information we have, that we can trust this document at this time and assume that it's accurate. So I think based on that, that there's just no probable cause, and I agree with Attorney Drake.
Thank you, Mr. Petty and Attorney Drake. Is there any further discussion, or any board members have any questions or comments about this?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I would like to ask, this National Voter Registration Act that we have, is that part of our local government? Is that federal government? Who oversees that?
I can provide some information related to that, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Based on my research, and my research is limited to Googling this on the internet and Wikipedia, so I want to be very accurate with that statement. But according to it, I had the same question, and it says that the National Change of Address Registry is a database of approximately 160 million permanent change of address records, consisting of the names and addresses of individuals, families, and businesses who have filed a change of address with the United States Postal Service. This list is maintained by the U.S. Postal Service, and access to it is licensed to service providers and made available to mailers. And it indicated there are 6 licenses available, including full service providers and limited service providers. The use of this database is required in order to obtain bulk mail rates, as it minimizes the number of undeliverable as address mail cases saving the mailer money. So I also noted that in my research, again, it's limited to the internet, but that the actual change address registration process is vulnerable to fraudulent activities sometimes because no verification is done on the paper form. And read an article from an instance down in Florida where an elderly couple, a gentleman received his wife was actually in a long-term care facility, and someone filed a change of address form, and in essence trying to commit credit card fraud. They had his wife filing for a credit card application, and apparently it was trying to keep him from getting that notice of that. But so I mean, I think that as Mr. Petty pointed out, Assistant Attorney Petty, there is a lack of indicia of reliability with respect to this database, and I think that's something that's concerning.
Well, what database could the Secretary of State, and if I understood you right, that the Secretary of State does use this database, and do they send out notifications to all of the counties and directors of these voter registration of this information? Where would the director receive her information about change of address from?
Well, this is the database that's used, is my understanding, by the Secretary of State's office. But it's important to point out that there's a separate statutory provision, which I alluded to in my remarks, that basically sends a notice to the former address, sends a note in case there's fraud, sends a notice to the address where the individual's changed, but that individual is not immediately moved to the status where they're not able to vote. They're moved to an inactive list, and then you go through 2 election cycles, and then at that point there can be a vote by the board to move that person to remove them from the list. So my concern with this process is those protections, that level of protection is not there, and also the fact we're so close to the election. I'm not sure. I believe that may violate federal law if we were to move in that regard.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around some of this process. So there's not a better system or a better entity that the Secretary of State or the director of the board of directors would be able to access to get better information. So if Mr. Roden were in the future, or someone else in the future, what would they have to do to cure what they have done in this challenge, that where they've missed the mark? How would they prove that John R. Smith, that lived at 7 Smith Street, moved to Atlanta? How would they cure that to make sure that John R. Smith, which is moved from Athens to Fulton County, how would you cure that and be sure that it's the same person? Would you have to have a birth date? What further information would the law require? Because we always want to go back to what does the law require of us as a voter and as voter registration. We always want to follow what the law says and not our emotions. So what kind of cure would someone need to provide an accurate list of voters that have moved? How would you prove that they did or did not? Because we go through the process. I know the directors told us in the past how many notices go out to these people. They don't just snatch their name off. It's a very lengthy process. We give them ample opportunity to cure what's wrong, to be able to continue keeping them on the rolls.
Well, I think I believe that I think the process you alluded to, I think, is is how the legislature has tried to make sure that people don't get removed improperly. I would also say that, you know, in my review of the statute, mine and Mr. Petty's review, one thing that might, you know, I believe that such a mass challenge like this is going to be very difficult to sustain using an unverified database for the board to find probable cause. And so the question is, what could be done? Well, I think this statute's actually intended more for perhaps an individual instance might be a better thing, where I actually live I bring one challenge. I may live next door to someone, and I know they've moved, and they've told me personally that they moved, and they've explained that they don't have any intention of coming back. Perhaps then this statute might be available, but to use but to use it in such a blanketed matter with a lack of firsthand knowledge, I think is going to be very difficult. That's the lack of firsthand knowledge is the problem here, in my opinion. Mr. Roden's lack of firsthand knowledge, and so Michael, do you have anything you might add to that discussion?
The one thing I would add is just to clarify a little bit is that what we've been provided and what we're talking about is a spreadsheet that's allegedly downloaded from the National Change of Address Registry. We don't know, as Attorney Drake said, there's I guess 6 licenses, companies that can pull it. We don't know which one of those 6 licensees pulled this list. We don't know what the search criteria were. We don't know who it was pulled by or what for. So I think things like that also give me concern, if that makes sense.
Okay, my last comment would be that I've heard it mentioned that this is a GOP Republican challenge. Is that listed as a GOP Republican challenge on any of these letters or legal documents? From what I'm hearing, this is coming from an individual voter, and we know from the Georgia Code that any voter can challenge another voter. That is legal. So this is not like a witch hunt. This is something where one voter has the legal right to challenge another voter, and I think we need to stay on the path of what the law says and not wander down Blueberry Lane thinking that this is a witch hunt, because all of us should want voter integrity. We want to be sure when a person votes that person is a registered voter, that they've gone through the process, and we want to respect everybody's vote, but we need to protect this right that we have to vote and be sure that no one is diluting our vote because they don't have the legal right to vote. We need to be very careful with this slippery slope that we could slide down.
I'll take, so that was a comment, not a question. Is that correct, Ms. Steele?
Yes, it was. I just wanted to make a statement that if you want to clarify, Attorney Drake, that this document does not come from the GOP or the Democrat Party or an independent party. This is coming from a voter who has the right to challenge another voter. Am I correct there?
And before Mr. Drake responds, I'd like to make a comment, and then you can respond, Mr. Drake. True the Vote sent an email on back, like literally came from their email, right? And it was signed by Gordon Roden. There's also a press release on truethevote.org stating that True the Vote partners with Georgia GOP to ensure transparent, secure ballot effort for Senate runoff elections, December 14, 2020. It's also in national news media that the Georgia GOP and True the Vote have partnered to do this. And True the Vote, by the way, for people who don't know, is a conservative political group based in Texas. We also know that Gordon Roden is the chair of the Clarke County Republican Party. So this notion that this is not somehow connected to the Clarke County Republican Party or the Georgia GOP is just flat out false. Mr. Drake, you're welcome to respond.
Well, I will confirm that the complaint, as I indicated, well, I will confirm the complaint does not say anything about being filed by the Republican Party. It indicates it's filed by Gordon Roden, an Athens-Clarke County elector who lives at 340 Heather Cove, Athens, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Is there any other question or comment from board members?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment as a former postal employee of 34 years.
Go for it, Ms. Fambro.
I think that they are trying to put a burden on us that we cannot bear because they themselves have not borne that burden to show us any proof that these are illegitimate voters or that their vote should not count. I have no problem dealing with individuals who come with evidence, but today I can say that I have not seen any evidence that would make me think that what they're asking us to do is a legitimate request.
Thank you, Ms. Fambro. Are there any questions or comments from board members regarding this issue?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
I would agree with Ms. Fambro 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Napper. Mr. Raff, we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I'm not seeing any probable cause for this, and yeah, I think it's illegal, and I would not like to proceed with it.
Thank you, Mr. Raffle. One more question, Mr. Drake. In addition to the issues of probable cause and the reliability of this list, there's also the issue of the timing of this challenge. I know we've been told that we would be in violation of federal statutes because within the 90-day window. Would you mind confirming or disconfirming that?
Well, as I indicated in my earlier presentation, the National Voter Registration Act states that states shall complete not later than 90 days prior to the day of an election for federal office, any program with the purpose which is to systematically remove the names of ineligible voters from the list of eligible voters. We're approximately 17 days for the election. And so, Mr. Chairman is correct that we could be, certainly the board could be found to be violation of the National Voter Registration Act.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. I would just like to add that we have been contacted by the following organizations advocating against Gordon Roden's challenge, two challenges today. American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia, Fair Fight Georgia, Perkins Coie Law Firm, NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, All Voting is Local Georgia, Georgia NAACP, Black Voters Matter Fund, Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund, League of Women Voters, the Georgia League of Women Voters, and the Voters of Georgia. So, I just wanted to put it on the record that all of these entities have contacted this board to advise us this would be, if we were to find that there is probable cause, if we were to sustain this challenge, that it would be against federal and state laws, and that it would also be basically acquiescing to efforts to suppress voters throughout the entire state of Georgia and disenfranchise voters illegally in our state. And having said that, do we have a motion to find that no probable cause exists to support the sustainment of Gordon Roden's two challenges to the eligibility of thousands of voters in Clarke County?
So moved.
I second.
Motion made by Mr. Raffle, seconded by Ms. Fambro. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm voting aye as well. Any opposed?
I abstain.
We have, for the record, Ms. Till is abstaining from this vote. The other four members of our board have voted yes. So the motion carries. This board has found that there is no probable cause to support sustainment of Gordon Roden's two challenges to the eligibility of thousands of voters in Clarke County, and therefore that challenge is denied. Are there any announcements before we move forward to adjournment? Okay. Do we have a motion? And let me just say this. I'm grateful that this board decided to do what was the legal thing to do and also the ethical thing to do in this situation. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Fambro made the motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
So motion made by Ms. Fambro, seconded by Mr. Napper. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 I'll vote aye as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.